Sure. Here's section 1 of the story script, minimum 760 words, written in first-person narrative, emotionally direct and concise, with no repetition or filler. I never imagined my life would spiral the way it did. My name is David. I'm 38, married for 10 years, and for most of that time, I believed I was a good husband. I work from home as a freelance designer, which gives me flexible hours but also a lot of solitude. Rachel, my wife, is a registered nurse. Dedicated, hardworking, and exhausted. Most nights, she comes home past midnight, barely awake enough to mumble hello before crashing into bed. We used to be close, laughing over dinner, binge-watching shows until late, stealing weekends away from everything. But over the last couple of years, something shifted. Her long shifts, our routines, the small things that chipped away at intimacy. We stopped talking unless it was about bills or groceries. Physical connection became occasional, mechanical. I didn't blame her. I knew she was tired, and I convinced myself we were just in a phase. Then Emily moved in next door. She was young, 24, maybe 25. Short brown hair, soft voice, warm smile. I noticed her unloading boxes from a U-Haul one morning and offered to help. She smiled like she hadn't expected kindness from anyone. I carried a few heavy things into her apartment. We chatted casually. She'd just moved from 2 towns over after breaking up with her boyfriend. Needed a change, she said. Fresh start. I got that. Over the next few weeks, our paths crossed more frequently. She'd wave when I was out grabbing the mail. Ask how work was going. Once, she stopped by to borrow a wrench. She returned it with a plate of homemade cookies and a small thank you note. It was innocent. Neighborly, but I started noticing things. Like how she lingered a little longer at the door when we talked. How her eyes stayed on mine when she laughed. One afternoon, I was taking out the trash when she stepped out in leggings and a tank top, earbuds in, on her way for a jog. She smiled and said, "Don't work too hard in there." My heart thudded a bit. I felt ridiculous. I was a grown man, married, and barely surviving routine conversations with my own wife. What the hell was I doing? Still, I looked forward to seeing Emily. She asked questions Rachel hadn't asked in months: how I was sleeping, what I was watching lately, what music I liked. One Saturday, she saw me in the yard and brought over 2 iced coffees. "You said you liked vanilla," she said. I had, 3 weeks ago. She remembered, that day we sat on my porch. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about everything from old movies to weird childhood memories. She was bright, funny, thoughtful. I wasn't even trying to impress her. I was just enjoying the attention. I told myself it was harmless. I was just lonely. A little connection, that's all. Rachel had started picking up extra shifts at the hospital. She wanted to help cover some debt we'd been avoiding. I admired her for that. But with every added shift, she pulled further away. At night, I'd lie beside her in bed, watching the rise and fall of her breath, wondering when the last time was that she touched me without being half asleep. I tried to talk to her once about how I felt, but she brushed it off. "We are both tired. It's just a busy time." It always seemed to be a busy time. A week later, Emily knocked around 7 in the evening. She'd made too much pasta and asked if I wanted a plate. I hesitated. She noticed. "It's okay if you're busy," she said. I told her I wasn't. I took the plate. She stayed for a bit, standing at the door while I tasted it. "You cook too?" I asked. She grinned, survival skill. "I don't trust takeout anymore." We laughed. When she left, I stood there for a moment longer than I should have. I remember shutting the door and walking into the kitchen, feeling something stir that I hadn't felt in a long time, not lust, but the warmth of being noticed. The next morning, Rachel left early again. I didn't see her before she went. On the counter was a note, working double. "Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at those 2 words, "love you," and realized I couldn't remember the last time I said them out loud to her. That day, Emily texted me a meme. Nothing serious. Just something dumb we had laughed about on the porch. I replied with a smiley face. She sent another message. We went back and forth for an hour. The texts weren't flirty. Not explicitly. But I couldn't deny that something had shifted. It wasn't a thunderclap. It was a slow, quiet drift. But I was drifting. Away from Rachel. Toward something I didn't yet understand, or maybe didn't want to admit, and deep down, I already knew where it was heading. Let me know when you're ready for section 2. Of course. Here's section 2, written in the same focused, high-quality narrative style, minimum 760 words, continuing directly from where the story left off. Emily invited me over one evening. She said she'd bought a bottle of wine she didn't want to open alone. I hesitated. I typed out an excuse and deleted it. Then I said I'd stop by after dinner. Rachel had left for her night shift an hour earlier. Emily's place smelled faintly of lavender and something sweet baking in the oven. She wore a simple black t-shirt and shorts. Nothing revealing, but she looked comfortable. Relaxed. At ease in her own space. She poured the wine. We sat close enough to feel the quiet hum of tension, but far enough that either of us could pretend we didn't notice it. We talked about nothing and everything. She mentioned her ex, how he cheated, how she'd moved here to start fresh. She said she liked having someone to talk to who didn't play games. I nodded, sipped slowly, said nothing. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, something would slip. Something real. The second glass of wine went down easier than the first. I could feel it, dulling my guard. I asked if she was okay, living alone, adjusting. She said she felt safe here. Because of you, she added, then looked away quickly. I stared at the rim of my glass. It was late when I stood to leave. She followed me to the door. I said goodnight. She didn't say anything. She just reached out and touched my arm. Not seductively. Just soft, brief, grounding. Like she didn't want me to go yet. I didn't move. Her eyes met mine and held them. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, silent, inevitable. I kissed her. There was a beat of hesitation. Then she kissed me back. The weight of that moment crushed the 10 years of marriage I'd carried. I should have stopped. I didn't. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time thing, a stupid lapse in judgment caused by wine and loneliness, but I stayed. It wasn't rushed or frenzied. It was quiet. Controlled. Every movement deliberate. We didn't speak. There was no awkward fumbling, no nervous laughter. It was terrifying how natural it felt. Like we had both been waiting for this to happen, whether we admitted it or not. Afterward, we lay there in the quiet. I stared at the ceiling, heart thudding. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I had stepped outside of myself and watched everything collapse from a distance. Emily rested her head on my chest and whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't know if she meant it, and I didn't answer. I got dressed in silence. She walked me to the door. She said goodnight like nothing had changed. I nodded and left. The walk back to my house took less than a minute, but I felt every step like a weight on my chest. Inside, everything looked exactly as I'd left it. But it felt different. Wrong. I stood in the hallway, staring at Rachel's empty shoes by the door, her water bottle on the counter, her jacket hanging over the chair. I went upstairs, took a shower, stood under the water too long. I scrubbed hard, but nothing came off. I still felt like I was wearing someone else's skin. When Rachel got home the next morning, she crawled into bed and kissed me on the cheek. I pretended to be asleep. My body tensed when she touched me, and she noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked. I said I was tired. She curled into me and fell asleep within minutes. I stared at the ceiling until the room blurred. Emily texted me later that day. "Thanks for last night. I know it was unexpected. But it felt right." I read it twice, then deleted it. I didn't respond. I avoided her for days. I kept the blinds closed, didn't go outside unless I had to. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not just the sex, but the way she looked at me. Like I mattered. Like she saw me. Like I wasn't invisible. Rachel started talking about taking a weekend trip together. Said we needed a reset. Her voice was light, hopeful. I nodded and said sure. I felt like a criminal sitting across from her at breakfast, nodding at plans I no longer deserved to be part of. I told myself it was over. I had slipped once. I could pull back. But the guilt didn't disappear. It grew heavier. More real. I started checking my phone when Rachel wasn't looking, afraid a text from Emily might pop up. I even considered changing my number. I wanted to confess. I wanted to come clean and rip the bandage off. But I was afraid. Not just of Rachel's anger, but of her hurt. The kind of hurt you can't fix. The kind that never fully heals, and deep down, I knew this wasn't over yet. Not really. Something had been broken, and pretending it hadn't would only make it worse. I had crossed a line, and the path back wasn't clear anymore. Let me know when you'd like to continue with section 3. Absolutely. Here is section 3 of the story, continuing the narrative with emotional clarity and directness, written to be impactful and to the point, minimum 760 words. I thought I could live with it. That I could bury the guilt deep enough to carry on like nothing had happened. I was wrong. Everything changed after that night. I started looking over my shoulder, not because anyone suspected, but because I couldn't look anyone in the eye anymore, especially Rachel. She noticed. She didn't say anything at first, just gave me that quiet, observant look she always had when she knew I was lying but hadn't decided to call me out yet. I became short with her. Distracted. I avoided her touch. I stopped asking about her day, not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't stand pretending everything was normal. I thought maybe the silence would protect both of us. Emily, on the other hand, acted like nothing had happened. She smiled the same way when she saw me. Sent the occasional text, light and casual, as if we were still just friendly neighbors. I never replied. I couldn't. Every message from her made my chest tighten. I wasn't angry at her. She didn't seduce me. I walked into it with my eyes open. I made the choice. A week passed. Then too. Rachel planned a date night. She booked a table at the same restaurant where we celebrated our 5th anniversary. She even bought a new dress. She came downstairs, smiling, asking how she looked. I told her she looked beautiful. And I meant it. But something inside me recoiled. I couldn't explain it. She looked like the woman I had loved for so many years, and yet, I felt a distance I didn't know how to cross anymore. That night, she reached for my hand at dinner. Her eyes were soft, trying. She talked about how she missed us. Said she knew work had pulled her away lately, but she was ready to shift things, make more time, maybe even cut back on shifts. I smiled, nodded, played along. All I could think was, she has no idea who she's talking to right now. The guilt wasn't just sitting on me anymore, it was eating me. Every time she laughed, it cut deeper. Every kind gesture was a reminder of how little I deserved it. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't focus on work. I kept replaying that night with Emily, trying to convince myself it was a single mistake. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It wasn't about sex. It was about being seen, noticed, wanted. And that truth made it worse. Then it happened. Rachel was doing laundry and asked me to help with the cloud backup on her phone. She wasn't snooping. She genuinely needed help. I synced the wrong account by accident. Emily's texts appeared on the screen. Not many, but enough. A timestamp. A message she hadn't deleted. It said, "Wish we could talk like we used to." I missed that night. Rachel froze. She read it. Then she looked at me. Her face went blank. No yelling. No screaming. Just silence. That was worse. Her voice broke when she asked how long it had been going on. I said it was one night. She asked why. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't shatter her further. She didn't cry until she was halfway out the door. Then she did. The kind of crying that comes from the deepest part of someone. The kind that doesn't need words. She packed a bag and left for her sister's that night. The house felt like a tomb after that. Quiet, still, punishing. I tried calling. She didn't answer. I sent texts, apologies, explanations, confessions. Nothing came back. I reached out to a therapist. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I wanted to punish myself, but there was nothing I could do that would make me feel worse than I already did. I walked through the days in a daze, waiting for some form of punishment that never came. Emily moved out 2 weeks later. No goodbye. No final word. Just an empty apartment and a delivery truck. I watched from my window. I didn't move. I didn't feel anything. Just numb. Rachel finally agreed to meet. It wasn't a reconciliation. She needed closure. She asked questions. Some I could answer. Some I couldn't. She told me she felt like she had lost me before I ever touched anyone else. That maybe if we had talked sooner, if we'd both been honest about how far we'd drifted, things would have been different. I told her I didn't cheat because I stopped loving her. I cheated because I stopped recognizing myself. That didn't make it better. But it was the truth. She didn't promise anything. She didn't slam the door shut either. We ended the conversation quietly. Respectfully. Sadly, I still see her sometimes. Picking up mail, passing by in the car. We nod. Nothing more. I live with the memory of what I did. Not just the act, but the slow steps that led there. The glances I ignored, the distance I never addressed, the silence I let grow between us. I don't blame her if she never forgives me. All I can do now is remember what I broke. And try, every day, not to break anything else. Let me know if you'd like a full compiled version, or if you need this repurposed for narration, voiceover, or subtitles. Certainly. Here's section 4, written in the same concise, emotionally honest style, continuing the narrative seamlessly. This part extends the story beyond the immediate aftermath, offering depth, reflection, and personal consequence. Minimum 760 words, no fluff, no repetition. 3 months passed. Rachel hadn't come back. She hadn't filed for divorce either. We existed in limbo. I didn't call anymore. She didn't block me, but I understood her silence was a choice. She was giving herself space. I spent those months trying to fix things inside myself that I didn't even know were broken. Therapy became my routine. Once a week, same chair, same uncomfortable honesty. The first few sessions, I talked about the affair. Then I stopped talking about Emily altogether. It wasn't about her anymore. She had been a symptom, not the cause. What I had done was about me, how I handled resentment, disconnection, my inability to confront things directly. I realized how long I had felt invisible in my own home and how I never said anything about it. I blamed Rachel's absence for the distance, but I had become emotionally absent long before she ever worked a double shift. I remembered how many nights I sat on the couch, eyes glued to a screen, never turning to her even when she was right there. I began to understand that neglect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just silence stretched over years, polite smiles replacing real conversation. I played the role of the patient husband, quietly building resentment like bricks in a wall. I wanted her to fix it, not realizing I'd stopped showing up too. People think cheating happens in a moment. It doesn't. It builds, quietly. In unspoken needs. In overlooked glances. In unmet conversations. By the time you realize you've opened the door, you're already inside the wrong room. I never tried to contact Emily. Not once. She became a closed chapter, filed under a moment I wish had never happened. I didn't miss her. I missed who I had been pretending to be when I was with her, someone desirable, seen, appreciated. But it wasn't real. It was a fantasy wrapped in timing and attention. A hollow replacement for the truth I was avoiding at home. One Saturday, I saw Rachel at the farmer's market. She was with a friend. She looked lighter. Not happier, but less weighed down. I stood at a distance, uncertain whether to approach. She noticed me, gave a small nod, then turned back to her conversation. That nod carried more pain than anger ever could. It said, "I've moved past needing anything from you." Later that day, I got a text from her. It simply read, "I'm not ready to talk. But I hope you're still doing the work." I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say that would sound right. But it mattered. She still cared enough to check. Even if it wasn't about us. I stopped trying to plan what came next. I let go of the hope that things would go back to how they were. Not because I'd given up, but because I understood now that who we were then couldn't survive what had happened. If we ever found our way back, we'd have to rebuild everything from the ground up. I started focusing on the life I still had. My work. My health. I reached out to a few friends I'd let drift away over the years. I even visited my parents for the first time in almost a year. They didn't know what had happened, and I didn't tell them. I just listened. I was done trying to rewrite the past. I was finally learning how to be present. Some nights were still hard. The silence in the house was loud. The bed felt too big. I'd find myself thinking about Rachel's laugh, the way she used to hum in the kitchen, the way she'd touch my shoulder lightly when she walked past. These memories didn't hurt like they used to. They reminded me of what matters when you strip everything else away. I still didn't know if she'd come back. I didn't know if I deserved for her to. But I had stopped waiting. Not out of apathy, but out of respect for her healing and mine. One morning, I made coffee and looked out the window, just watching the world move without me. I realized I wasn't waiting for a punishment anymore. I was just living with the consequences. Not because I had been caught, but because I had to face the man I'd become and choose, every day, to be better than him. Infidelity doesn't just destroy relationships. It destroys illusions. And once they're gone, you're left with two choices: run from who you were, or rebuild from the rubble. I chose to stay. To own it. To learn, and maybe, one day, that will be enough. Let me know if you'd like a final compiled version of all 4 sections, or if you'd like a specific use case adaptation, e.g., narration-friendly formatting, subtitle scripting, etc.